Here are the topics covered in the election process revision videos. This video will look at split ticket voting in detail and congressional elections and their trends. US politics is characterised by split ticket voting. This is when voting for candidates from different parties and different types of elections are held at the same time. In 2020, for example, it might mean voting for Biden as president, but for a Republican in the Senate or in House elections. This is a regular feature of voting behaviour in the US, but has sharply declined in recent times. The year 2016 was the first time in modern US politics when every Senate race corresponded with how the state voted in that year's presidential election. With personalities still playing an important role in US politics, many voter choices may be built on the likability or experience of a particular candidate. The main reasons usually associated with split ticket voting are as followed. It reflects preferences for personalities over parties in some cases. US parties have traditionally been quite broad church, although this is much less true today. The sheer number of elected officers offers many opportunities to split one's ballot. There are three main consequences of split ticket voting. It can lead to a divided government at either a state or national level. It can also lead to split Senate delegations, where you have one senator from each party. This is far less common than in the past, but in the 2020 to 2022 Senate, Ohio, Montana, and West Virginia were among the states with split representation. It can also affect voting behaviour and actions. An elected representative from a split district or state must be careful about how they vote and the amount of support that they offer. So why has split ticket voting declined? Well, the main answer here is that there is an ever-widening divide between the Democrats and Republicans on fundamental political values, as well as the fact that Americans are more consistently liberal or conservative in their views in the past. Essentially, the US has become more partisan and more polarised and is therefore less likely to vote across the aisle. So far, we have studied the presidential elections in great detail. However, there are other elections in the US that we need to be aware of. Both houses of Congress, both the House of Representatives and the Senate, are now directly elected. This hasn't always been the case. Up until the passage of the 17th Amendment in 1913, the Senate was indirectly elected. Congressional elections are held every 2 years, and on alternate occasions, these elections coincide with the presidential elections. So, for example, in 2016, there was both a presidential election and a congressional election. Members of the House of Representatives serve 2-year terms, while senators serve 6-year terms, but 1/3 of the senators are up for re-election every 2 years. Therefore, in every 2-year cycle of congressional elections, the whole House of Representatives and 1/3 of the Senate are up for re-election. Elections in the years between presidential elections are therefore called midterm elections, as they fall midway through the president's 4-year term of office. Due to the fact that congressional elections coincide in every alternative cycle with the presidential election, people may be voting at the same time for a president, senator, and representative. Therefore, it is difficult to separate voting intentions in these elections from the votes that people might be casting for the presidency. As a consequence, most analysis of congressional elections comes from the midterms, in which voters are not casting a presidential ballot. There are 5 trends that are apparent when it comes to congressional elections. The power of incumbency is significant, the coattails effect is limited, split ticket voting is declining, and there are fewer competitive districts. And lastly, the president's party tends to lose seats in the midterm congressional elections. Let's break down each trend in congressional elections, starting with the power of incumbency. There is strong support for incumbents in congressional elections. In 9 election cycles between 2000 and 2016, re-election rates in the House ranged from a low of 85.4% in 2010 to a high of 97.8% in 2000, while in the Senate they ranged from a low of 79.3% in 2006 to a high of 96.1% in 2004. This means that most members of Congress leave by voluntary retirement rather than electoral defeat. There are many reasons for high rates of re-election in Congress. For example, as an incumbent, one has the ability to provide constituency services, meaning anything from helping an individual constituent to receiving the correct level of service. High levels of name recognition in any election compared with a challenger, plus the levels of seniority in Congress, is a factor in the power of the incumbency. Finally, most incumbents have a huge advantage in fundraising compared to challengers. Another trend is the coattails effect. This happens when a strong candidate for a party at the top of the ticket can help other party candidates get elected at the same time. Few modern presidents have enjoyed much in the way of a coattails effect since 1980, when Republican Ronald Reagan helped his party gain 33 seats in the House and 12 seats in the Senate, with no fewer than 9 incumbent Democrat senators being defeated. Lastly, there is split ticket voting. This has been covered earlier in the revision video, but this is a huge trend of congressional elections. At a midterm election, they might vote for a Democrat governor, but a Republican member of Congress. Another trend is fewer competitive districts. Once there was around 1/4 of House districts that were truly competitive. In 1992, there were 111 competitive House districts. Gradually, this number has fell. This is significant as it makes it harder for the party control of the House to change hands. It also means that members who represent safe districts are much more likely to vote in line with their own party rather than seek deals with the opposing party. Lastly, there is the trend that the president's party tends to lose seats. There is evidence that the president's party usually loses seats in both houses in the midterm elections. In 6 midterm elections between 1994 and 2014, the president's party has lost an average of 25 House seats and between 4 to 5 Senate seats. This is because if a president has had a positive effect for his party in the presidential election 2 years before, it is likely that his party's House candidates, now devoid of his presence on the ticket, will do less well. Voters often see the midterm elections as a chance to express their disappointment or disapproval with the president's previous 2 or 6 years in office.